Hey guys, so today we're going to be working on the hunting knife project. If you saw my other video, we did a convex edge and ground in the clip point. Today we're going to be working on doing an 800 hand rub finish. We're going to work up through the grits, get this all nicely sanded and prepped, and get it ready for the handle. Check it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to work this knife on the same direction with the sandpaper. We're not going to do any cross hatching. You know, where you're going one way with your sandpaper and in the next grit you're going to come across to make sure you got all your sanding scratches out. 220, the first stage with the 220 is the most important one, doing it using this process, because that's going to let you get the forging, you know, all the forging trash and all the grinder marks and, you know, the heavier grit marks out of the knife. You're going to do all your blending with the 220 grit, and then you're going to follow through right up the ladder to 800 grit, going in the same direction. The only time you need to make sure you have every diagonal or 45 scratch out of there is if you're going to do a mirror polish on your blades. We're not doing that. We're doing the 800 grit hand rub finish, hand rub satin finish. So we're just going to keep going in the same direction after we get the 220 worked out and everything blended in. You can see I still have a bit of that convex in here. We're going to blend all that right in with the 220. And then from there, it's just going to be, you know, a piece of cake. So your first pass with a 220 grit is going to tell you everything you need to know on all the areas that you need to work on. So I'm not sure if you can see that, but you can see there, lots of scratches, some decarb going on. We got quite a bit of work. So 220, you know, the pass with the 220 usually takes the longest to clean up. Like I mentioned, once you get the 220 cleaned up, 320, 400, that all goes real fast, real easy. So I let my inner Picasso out and started playing a little with some poor man's die chem. You can see here I got a bunch of black marks on the blade. So what I did is I took some black Sharpie marker and used that to highlight any scratches, any decarb spots, even high spots. Stuff works great, cheap, works great, and I use it throughout the hand finishing process. Well, I finished up with a 220 grit, all the scratches, all the decarb, everything's gone. We're ready to go on to the next stage. So the next step, I want to get the bolster area and the flat area up here, up by the spine. I want to get that ground or sanded down flat. The issue with this is I have this long edge here, and using a flat bar is not going to cut it. I can clean it up in this area up here, but it's not going to reach up here. So the only viable solution I have to this problem is to take this over here to my leather working station and use the precision ground piece of marble that I use for stamping my leather. So we'll use this piece of 220 grit, take it, and we'll work this flat as I can, and then we'll go from there. So I hit both sides. I got the bolster area nice and flat, and the flat area where the transition line is up by the spine, that's all nice and flat too. So we got everything hit with 220 grit. What I'm going to do is take this over back to my hand finishing station, and we're going to work on doing the clip and get that all cleaned up. And I'll show you how I do that. So it's the next day, and I run through all the sandpaper grits up to 800. What I need to do now is drag this out with 800 grit to get an even satin finish. Let's go to the bench. So to maintain an even satin finish, you're going to want to have fresh paper and a hard sanding block to maintain, your crisp edges in here. You're going to be going through a lot of paper. It takes a lot of fresh paper. A couple passes and you want to change it out, go on to the next fresh batch of paper and move on from there. So I like to start off with the plunge area and use the edge of my sanding block. And what I do is I tip it up. So I'm going to tip this up on the edge and just start back a little bit, and I'm going to go and I'm going to hook up. Go in, hook up. So when you go to drag out the length of the blade, I try to eyeball a straight part of the spine and try and maintain that angle all the way through. Line up, maintain that angle all the way through. Now, if you remember in my previous video, this is a convex edge. So down in here, it's going to get a bit rounded. So I'm going to have to maintain a little bit of an angle as I swipe through and drag it out. So tip up, start dragging, and slowly let the block down. It's going to take quite a few passes to get this all nice and even. Alright, so we got our satin finish, maker's mark. Next it's apply a coat of wax, wrap it up, and then move on to the fun part, doing the handle.